One, I'm getting better at remembering how to go live. I am back. I'm doing this weekly. So I actually wanted to be live an hour ago, but I have to say I ended up going to last minute to an event at my son's school. So I thought that was really fun that I was able to just go do that. I normally wouldn't, in the past, wouldn't have been able to do that. And then with all that I decided to do last minute, I had skipped a break, which involved, eating some food. So I decided I needed to do that. So I wouldn't come on here hangry, which are a few things that I've talked about, that I've posted about this week. So I thought that was worth mentioning. But I felt that was really important to do that first. So I decided to go with the F.E.A.R Chronicles, which is false evidence appearing real. At first I thought it sounded a little too much, but I think it actually describes kind of this series perfectly. So I'm going to keep it for now. But I couldn't decide on the title for this, but I'm somewhere between straddling two worlds. So then go with that for now. But to get things kind of started, I am going to recap a little bit what I talked about last week, just so it makes a little bit of sense of where I'm going with this series. So I am a former burned out SLP turned, consultant and strategist. And what we're going to talk about today a little bit, what I want to share is something that I haven't really unpacked publicly, but it's worth sharing because I feel like it's very important to really describe the journey that I've gone through. And this stems from, now we're at a point where it was about 5-ish years ago. So the previous episode was kind of what I call the prelude, which was kind of everything that came up to the point before I decided to start my private practice, and where I was already in a state of burnout and didn't even realize it based on all the decisions that I had made and the actions that I took up until that point. So I left off saying that I kind of did my pros and cons list, and I decided that I wanted to open a private practice, but I went a step further and said, I really want to not just have a practice, I want to have something else. And I had decided at that point that was going to be a mobile modified barium swallow study company. And with that involves some working capital up front because you need the equipment. So we're going to start there. So I did some research, contacted a colleague. He said he was going to sell me one of his older trucks that already had all the equipment in it because he had a similar business. Great. So that's where we are. Okay. So I had my full-time job as a rehab director. I said I was all in and gave my notice. And I had my son was... At this point in time, I had already come back from maternity leave, so I'm just setting the stage here, so it makes sense. He was just under a year old. So, he's now 6. So, here we go. I say all of this because this is going to make sense for a lot of people because everybody has had a different experience from 5 years ago, and this is a little taste of what mine was. So, I gave my notice to my full-time consistent job that I was working 50 to 60 hours a week, but had a consistent paycheck with, in February of 2020. Okay. So that helps why I'm saying all the things I'm saying. So I was in my own world in a sense that I worked so much that I wasn't at a place where I could keep up on current events. If I heard of anything big that was going on in the world, typically it was like from a coworker or a patient. So it was early February. Yes. And I had at that point gave my notice, and in the process of my notice period, I was looking for other sources of income that wasn't a full-time job. So I knew that I couldn't necessarily work full-time while trying to start a practice and do all the things. So I did secure a part-time job, still speech therapy, a part-time, and then I was slowly collecting on-call or PRN jobs as well. So I was able to do that while I had given notice. So I left my full-time job. So that was towards the end of February. I was hopeful. I thought, this is it. I've got it. I've got a plan. I know exactly what I'm going to do. And all I have to do is execute it, which is a great mindset to have. But remember where I already in a state of burnout that I already was. But to say the least, I started the part-time job. I started working a little bit on call at a few different places. Once I onboarded, I at that point had already taken out this loan for the upfront money to be able to purchase the truck for my business. And I thought I was doing everything right. And, I was like just checking off the boxes. So just shy of a month of all these big changes, right? And I also moved in that time frame as well. The pandemic hit and the world was shut down. So there was an immediate sense of panic, among other things. I'm, obviously with the world in my lifetime has never shut down before. But also the fact that I had just quit my job. I just got in on this business that I didn't even get a chance to start because I didn't even have the truck yet. And everything was at a standstill. So everything was stalled. Obviously everything was, in a pause, and then it turned out to be a very long pause, but a pause. I didn't have the truck. I became unemployed for a while because in the setting that I was in, being on call and in several skilled nursing facilities, the first people that got cut or weren't allowed to work were on call because we didn't know we didn't know about COVID at the time, and so I was unemployed, pretty much for a few months there. And then I lost, all momentum and then what was I supposed, what was the next step? I didn't even know because this wasn't the plan. I didn't plan for this. So yeah, everything just stood really still. And so, as the months went by, it did give me some time because I had time, to work on some things that I probably wouldn't have worked on, which were adult things that I should have been doing now that I had small children, or a child, sorry. I only had one at the time. But between the world on pause and, all the things that I had slated that I planned to do, it was I get one thing done and then 10 other things popped up that I didn't know or didn't realize that I needed to do, right? So I think, you think of an outline and you have the one big title and then there's 10 other things underneath there now that you have to do. It's that hidden, what is that, accordion type menu? That's what it felt like. And every new thing that I discovered that, oh, I need to do that, or oh, I need to do that. It was 10 other things. And then those things became other things, and there was sub things, and the list went on. And everything took a lot longer than I thought it would to do. And so, the truck is delayed. I don't have the truck. I don't have the truck for a very long time because I couldn't go and travel to get the truck, which was originally my plan before the shutdown, because at that point in time, had I traveled out of state to go get the truck, I wouldn't have been able to work coming back because there were travel restrictions and all the things. So I digress. But so I didn't have the truck for a really long time. And then there's things that I didn't realize that I needed to do with just, state regulations, because particularly with the business that I was creating or starting was the regulations with radiation and all of the things, and then finding out that there was more to do and that I had to create policies and procedures, things that I didn't realize were specific to what I was doing. So those took a lot longer than anticipated as well. I did the things, and then, processes take longer. And with that, with the extended period of time that with the shutdown and things just not, being open like they were, the working capital that I had outside of what I purchased this truck for, those funds kind of were disappearing a lot more quickly than anticipated too, because I didn't have the business up and running like I thought I would. And then so this is over several months. This didn't all happen at once, but then I became pregnant with my daughter. And that pregnancy was a little more complicated than the first. So it was difficult for me to work as much as I did with my first pregnancy. So that made funds a little bit tighter. And then I knew at that point that I did not personally want to be involved with billing. So I went not out of my way, but I was very dedicated to finding a biller, and I had selected an EHR system, and I found it very difficult to find a biller that was familiar with not only speech pathology billing, but also Medicare billing, and also the EHR system. So that actually took a lot longer than anticipated. And through all that work, I did find a really nice gal. We got everything set up. And then at the very last minute, she quit. She couldn't do it. Canceled the contract. The contract was signed. She ended. And I was in dire straits. So there was it felt like one thing after another, and the timeline kept expanding, and I felt like I had no control over it, and things to me felt like pure chaos. And at the end of the day, I had to learn billing, credentialing, and of course scheduling and everything on my own. It was a one-person show for all the things. And, doing all these things while being, a fairly new mom and pregnant, and feeling like I'm struggling to stay afloat financially and emotionally. I mean, between the pandemic and all the things that had caused, and then when I did work again, pregnant, and COVID, and all these different nursing homes, and the precautions, and this and that. It was a very scary time, and I get, like I said, everybody has their own story, experience about COVID, and and my experience between like the straddling of two worlds is like, I continued to work in what I knew because I obviously needed money, because the practice wasn't up and going as I had hoped. And then still working as a clinician in the skilled nursing setting, where it was not necessarily a desirable time. And really what you saw and experienced in the nursing homes in that period of time is kind of, unless you've worked it or in a hospital or anything like that, it's a very, I think, trying experience. I mean, there's a lot of memorable moments in what you saw and how sick people were and everything like that. It was just a very, very, memorable time in my life, especially as my pregnancy progressed. And then, 1 year turned into like 2 years, and things started to open up. But really, one of the last places that opened up were skilled nursing facilities to visitors and otherwise. So for me, with the framework or the marketing campaign that I had with my mobile business was predominantly skilled nursing facilities. And so the idea was to travel to different nursing facilities. Could have been assisted livings, could be private residences, could have been group homes, what have you. But the primary focus was skilled nursing facilities. And granted, even though I worked in all these facilities, it still didn't necessarily transfer into, I would get a contract with this facility. Or their management company. So the thoughts that ran through my head, especially as time went on, was, I should be further along by now. Like, everyone else is doing it and handling this better. Like, what's going on? And, And then depending on what other surprises came up, my thought would be, I should know how to do this by now. Like this shouldn't be so hard. Why is this so hard? And I tried to do it all alone. And I felt like if I had to ask for help, then that meant that I wasn't really cut out to do this. And so it was a lot of struggle and kind of a back and forth with myself, even of like, this was truly what I was supposed to be doing, because this should be a lot easier. Now it's been years. And the real thing is there's different seasons of business and there's different seasons of life. And this particular season, during the pandemic and season of life, all transpired around the same time, which really was heavy. And it was a building phase. I was not only building my business, but I was creating a life. And I was, I still had a foot in my previous life to pay the bills. And I'm doing all the things. I'm wearing all the hats, and I'm trying to, self-educate as much as possible. I'm trying to, and still be like present and a good mother. And I am trying to be the best partner I can be. I am trying to, show up as the really good friend that, I know I can be. But like, I'm spread so thin across the board. Something has to give. And so sometimes in that phase, whether it's, the building phase of a business, things don't look pretty. They are messy. They can be isolating. They can be completely upside down, especially you throw a pandemic on top of it, right? So some questions, because I like to ask some reflective questions. So if you're watching this and wondering like, why does this feel so hard? Why am I always behind? And why does everyone else seem to have it figured out and I don't? Like, why? Like, what am I doing that's like, am I doing something wrong? Right? I want you to know that I've been there, and it's not a reflection of your potential. It's just the season of life that you are in. So, and it doesn't have to be just the building phase. I just say that because in my personal experience, that was the messiest phase of all. And and every phase is different. And sometimes your phase of life, like for myself, and my season of business they overlapped, and it was really, truly, honestly, a very trying experience. They don't always do that, but this particular time frame, it did. So my question then to you is, what season are you in right now? You might have to think about that, because you may think you're in one season, but truly you're in another. And for me, like my building season was long. I may or may not contribute that to the pandemic. I don't know. Would it have been different if there was not a pandemic? I will never know, because sometimes I wonder with what transpired after this point in time, after the building phase, if the pandemic hadn't happened, would this have been the same result? I'll never know. But for this, like, when I went into it, what my plan was, when I'm checking the boxes and I'm doing my business plan and I have everything set out, my building phase was less than 6 months. 3 to 6 months is what I anticipated. And I was going to, hit the ground running, and everything was a go on paper. And it was over a year. Closer to 2, I would say, but of just building. Because again, like every task that came up, there was another one and another one. And then sometimes there's things that were out of your control besides the pandemic. But for me, like even when it came to regulatory things, like you're at the mercy of, an entity, an organization that says yay or nay to something. And as we know, if I even talk about insurance credentialing, I mean, every time you send something in, you submit something, and then there needs to be a correction, whether that's billing, credentialing, or otherwise. It could be another 30 days before you hear back, and then there's another piece that you have to resubmit or correct it. So again, and it can easily, something that you think will take less than 6 months can take a year and a half. So if this is hitting home for you and you feel like your private practice is taking more time from you than it's giving back to you, then I do invite you to take the practice breakthrough assessment. So my mini audit is of your practice based on the questionnaire that you complete and submit to me. And what I do is I give you a recorded video, scorecard, and really just a surefire way to get you unstuck and reclaim your time. So you can comment breakthrough, you can send me a DM and I'll send you the link. But I really want to thank you for, well, hi. Hey, Paul. I want to thank you for hanging out with me. You know, again, this was pretty vulnerable, but again, this is a part of my story that I really wanted to share, because even if it helps one private practice owner, that's enough for me. And I'm truly grateful for that. Hi. So I already have some ideas, because what I'm going to do next week, because I have committed to doing this weekly for an undetermined amount of episodes, but is to take what I've shared today and I'm going to share you the reframe of it, because I basically showed you all of the things that happened in the moment, and it was just, you know, barrier, fire, barrier, delay, and the reframe of, again, because that was that false evidence appearing real. So again, thanks for joining, and I'll see you next time.